Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legionaries of Christ, and I am a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 40. We're in Intermirifica, the document on mass media, the meetings of social communication. We're in paragraph 1 on the teaching of the church, general principles. We're going to cover paragraphs 5 through 7 on the moral use and production of media. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we talked about the right and duty of the church to use media and the importance of instruction and media for people, instruction in media ethics for everyone. Today, we're going to talk about ethics in media, and there's going to be kind of 3 aspects of it. First, the news media. Second, objectivity of morality, that morality is objective, and so the news media should represent that. And then finally, portrayals of evil. How do we portray evil in the media? So we'll start with paragraph 5, ethics around news in the media. Like, that's a very clear aspect of the media, right? We turn on the news, we listen to the news, we find out what's going on. That is something that is very media important. So let's read the text. It is, however, especially necessary that all parties concerned should adopt for themselves the proper moral outlook on the use of these media, especially with respect to certain questions that have been vigorously aired in our day. The first question has to do with the information, as it is called, or the search for and reporting of the news. Now, clearly, this has become most useful and very often necessary for the progress of contemporary society and for the achieving closer links among men. The prompt publication of affairs and events provides every individual with a fuller continuing acquaintance with them, and thus all can contribute more effectively to the common good and more readily promote and advance the welfare of the entire civil society. Therefore, in society, men have a right to information in accord with the circumstances in each case about matters concerning individuals or the community. The proper exercise of this right demands, however, that the news itself that is communicated should always be true and complete within the bounds of justice and charity. In addition, the manner in which the news is communicated should be proper and decent. This means that in both the search for news and in reporting it, there must be full respect for the laws of the morality, for legitimate rights and dignity of the individual. For not all knowledge is helpful, but it is charity that edifies. Right? So, if we look at this paragraph again, we see this first sentence sets up a theme, right? That there is this idea of this moral outlook towards media, and that's going to be the theme for all the numbers today, right? And there's certain types of media that are more important, right? Because they have more influence, because they're more viewed, because they, affect public opinion more, those type of things, right? And also where it's lacking is more important, right? So, nursery rhymes, except for like Elsagate. If you don't know what Elsagate is, just think of bad YouTube kids videos. Kids videos like ABCs, I don't really see that there's really lacking. And you don't really need extensive ethics to give a kid's ABC song, right? As long as none of these things are things that little kids shouldn't know about, it's fine. And so the rest is, after that first one, is really specific on this topic of news or news information, right? The breaking news, right? And it has really radically changed since this in the last 60 years. Because something is quite different where today, if there's some kind of plane crash, I'm going to see it on Twitter or X, or I'm going to get a notification on my phone, likely within an hour or two, which even back in the 60s would have been radical, especially for cross country or things like that, which didn't travel at the same speed it does today. And it's good that we have that more fully and immediate news, right? It helps society advance, it can promote the common good. Just think of how missing children today, if a child is kidnapped, you imagine, that there's going to be on the news and all over the media and everything, right? Throughout the whole country. And so it's harder for somebody to kidnap a kid, stranger danger, right? A kid is much more likely to be kidnapped by those around him, not by strangers. But those rare ones that are strangers or are kind of abductions where there's a suspicion of violence or things like that, or sexual abuse, we can have the news all over the place and things, right? And then there is a general right to information. It's not universal. There's still privacy, right? So, somebody may not want to tell everything about themselves. We don't have the right to that automatically. And information might be relevant to that person or the public to be a right, right? So, for example, we have a right to know what the laws are. We have a right to know if politicians are getting large donations from certain organizations. They might be biased towards those organizations. We don't have a right to know, what a politician and his wife talked about last night before they went to bed. That's their private area, right? Maybe the politician told his wife, hey, I'm going to make this big decision tomorrow, and asked his wife's advice on it. And maybe she gave him good advice, but that's private area of his life. He has it with his wife there, right? Or her husband, if it's a female politician. But there's also ethics about communicating what's in the news, right? So here we talk about true and complete within the bounds of justice and charity. What is truth? It's the adequatio. Adequatio is a fancy Latin word meaning equality, equation, right? So the idea that what is in reality and what is in my mind are corresponding with each other. That's what we're talking about when we talk about adequatio. And it's not a bias, right? And it's completeness, right? So bias, very often in the news media, is in what stories are not reported, right? So if you have a publication that kind of portrays to report all the news, like something like your local paper, the stories they're not reporting might indicate bias, right? Because certain stories are going to look good for certain sides of different things, right? And that's the reality. That's often where you see the bias the biggest is, it's not reported, or it's reported in small print on page 10 rather than a front page headline, and things like that. And justice and charity, right? We don't gossip. It's not just gossip. It's respecting individuals. It's no needed vulgarity. It says proper and decent. We're not going to just, let's show pictures of this celebrity cheating on his wife or a celebrity cheating on her husband. No, let's not. And then human dignity and reporting and seeking news. Not every piece of knowledge is edifying or needed. Unfortunately, being online, I've learned about some unpleasant terms like, reading up on different aspects of, the industry of pornography and how people get addicted and things and able to help people who are struggling with that in a pastoral sense. Sometimes the article, even being relatively clinical, will have some details and some terms that I'm like, I really kind of wish I didn't have to know that. But as a priest who wants to help people who have that struggle, which is very common, that's an important thing for a priest today. At least I think it is. And then paragraph 6, right? We're moving on, the objectivity of truth, the moral order of the beauty, right? That adequatio important for the objectivity. But let's read it first. The second question deals with the relationship between the rights, as they are called, and the art and the norms of morality. Since the mounting controversies in the area frequently take their rise from false teaching about ethics and aesthetics, the Council proclaims that it all must hold to the absolute primacy of the objective moral order. That is, this order by itself surpasses and fittingly coordinates all the other spheres of human affairs, the arts not exempted, even though they are endowed with noble dignity. For man, who is endowed by God with the gift of reason and summoned to pursue lofty destiny, is alone affected by the moral order in his entire being. And likewise, if man resolutely and faithfully upholds this order, he'll be brought to the attainment and complete perfection and happiness. So that's the number, right? So this idea of the imago Dei, the image and likeness of God here is in there, right? For man, endowed with the gift of reason, he's the only one who's alone affected by the moral being and his whole nature. As much as your dog is friendly and things, your dog doesn't have the same spiritual nature, moral aspect that we do. Whether dogs go to heaven is a whole question. Jimmy Akin on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, also on SQPN, talks about it. He takes the position that animals probably do have an afterlife. I'm not so certain of that, but the reality is that we have something significantly higher in the spiritual realm than they do. And so here we're talking about objectivity or subjectivity, right? There is subjectivity in ethics, right? We sin in our subjective, right? If you don't know something is wrong or a sin or something in that realm and you do it, you're not necessarily sinning. Hopefully the people who are listening to this know the morals, but sometimes people don't know the right ethical thing. I've run into more than one case where a couple was misinformed in marriage prep about contraception and did some form of contraception that they were told was okay. They did what's reasonable. They went to the marriage prep. They listened and they did what they said, right? And then later on, they found out, oh, that's actually not what the church teaches. I think that particular case is getting better because the cases I remember were from they got married at least in the 20th century, not the 21st. And then, for example, we can't sin if we're, sleepwalking or unconscious or things like that. And the media should help people move from subjective to objective, help people to embrace an objective morality, right? Because morality, just like other truth things, has an objectivity. And there's also an objectivity of beauty, right? So beauty is in many ways more subjective in the sense that one person likes Van Gogh, another person likes Picasso, another person likes Raphael, another person likes whatever, like all the different artists. That's good. But beauty is a balance of proportions. So there's a degree which beauty is objective, right? And the objective beauty can portray things in accord with truth and goodness, in accord with truth, morality, goodness, etc. And this lets us pursue the good, right? We have the gift of reason. We can reason through all these things. And we alone are moral of the earthly creatures, right? That kind of thing. I started out with the Imago Dei, we're in the image and likeness of God. Imago Dei just means image of God in Latin. It's often used for that. I should have explained that when I did, 2 minutes ago. And it ultimately follows through that each of us can reach the resurrection, right? Our ultimate happiness is, happiness is defined by Aquinas as the complete attainment and possession of the highest and perfect good. And this is talking about something we get in heaven. And then the resurrection, we are body and soul united with God. It is not something we can get here on earth. But we are directed towards that, and that is the ultimate goal of morality. Although morality has a goal of our flourishing the various goods of this life here and now. So, paragraph 7 is talking about moral evil and its portrayal. I've touched on this before in I think yesterday or the day before. My mind escaped me exactly which day, but let's read paragraph 7. Finally, the narration, description, or portrayal of moral evil, even though through the media of social communication, can indeed serve to bring about a deeper knowledge and study of humanity, and, with the aid of appropriately heightened dramatic effects, can reveal and glorify the grand dimensions of truth and goodness. Nevertheless, such presentations ought to be the subject of moral restraint, lest they work to harm rather than the benefit of souls, particularly when there is a question of treating matters which deserve reverent handling, or which, given the baneful effects of original sin in men, could quite readily arouse base desires in them. So the point of this is that the media can portray evil, and in narrative it's sometimes important because you need to have an evil as an opposition, right? You need to have evil that the good is responded to, right? It helps understand our broken nature. If we have a good guy who has some imperfection, that helps us realize, hey, he is imperfect too, and I have that way that I can grow in my imperfection, right? There's not just like this angelic thing and this super demon, right? So we need that realization of that. And it also helps provide that contrast, right, for the good. So if you have the good guy, the bad guy. But also here it talks about the restraint, right? Man and woman, how do they present it, right? How do we present sexuality? How do we present violence? Because certain things, if we overdo it, we can arouse people's passions and actually be contrary. But if you have somebody and you want to say the bad guy's evil because he's cheating on his wife, you have him and some other woman go into a room and, then they wake up with the covers on them. It's very implied, right? Or if you want to show that this guy is a violent psychopath, you don't need to show graphically every little, squirting out of blood and things like that, right? And because that's serious, right? That's a way we can show restraint in media, which the church is asking those who do media to do at least. So let's conclude here. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. I do this podcast on a volunteer basis, and my local legionary community relies on donations to help pay the bills. If you want to support my community, you can go to patreon.com/frmatthewlc, and there's also a link for that and a one-time donation on my own website, frmatthewlc.com. You can also donate to help StarQuest via Patreon or otherwise at sqpn.com/give. Tomorrow we're going to continue on Intermerifica on the media. We're going to do paragraphs 8 to 10 on moderation and moderation in the media, which is important. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which will provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information, such as a playlist and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X.
Amen.